URL of your name if you remember AOL. Like AOL. It's not the same as yeah, I think
See the video no sound yet.
What did you say?
They said the video works but no sound.
That was from before.
That was a while ago.
Well, I mean, I just asked her. That was 13 minutes ago. But it should be fine because I can hear it on YouTube. I can hear it coming out. So, sound should be working now, everybody. And if it's not, tweet. Let me know. I can hear it on my laptop from the YouTube page. The hashtag is Nick, N-I-C-K-L-A-U-X.
this is true.
I guess it's like a question of confirmation only. You know what I mean? Like,
right, yeah. The rest is using this for however many years it's been out now. No, it's here. It's our new center. It's a couple miles away.
That's why I just met.
Yeah, well, originally from Mount area. And then I moved down here.
If I could ever get a connection.
Valley. Yeah. Are you from LA as well? Shit. I think about moving to the Pacific Northwest every so often. Yeah? No, not yeah? Yeah, I have this idea of it, and based entirely on conjecture and, I don't know, Portlandia, probably. But, yeah, I feel like...
It's almost all true.
Yeah?
Least important.
I feel like people are cool up there.
Very, very true.
Yeah, how are you adjusting to the LA scene?
There's parts of LA that I like, parts that I don't. It's different culture sometimes, but I like it. I'm a tight community of friends.
So you need people to bring them. Yeah,
almost instantaneous.
This is my second one. I was at another one like a month ago, or so long ago, and it was okay. It was fun.
Cross campus?
Yes.
I don't think that's upstairs.
Oh shit. Huh. Did you go to that one as well?
Which one was it?
It was the owner of Design and Everything Things.
Yeah,
Or second Yes. Yeah, I think I was much more interested in that before we started talking. I don't think it's a very good presenter, but the concepts are really interesting.
I had to read parts of that book in college.
Yeah? I'd never heard of it until that event. It's kind of strange. It seems like a really
It means I can think more things. Yeah, and I'm gonna get the not this one. I'm gonna get the home premium. But far.
available to help folks out. Who in here is a developer? Just want to kind of see that crossover. You guys are a rare breed, UX and developer. Normally, it's don't mix over too much. Very cool. All right, so we have design.windows.com here. And as part of our new design guidance on developing Windows Store, Windows 8 applications, we have a whole site set up. Designers can go to design.windows.com and download templates, Adobe Photoshop files, etc., to be able to get the design recommendations for developing Windows Store applications. So if you're consulting or doing work with a company and they say, hey, we want to get an application in Windows Store, you can come on to design.windows.com and download all the design guidance for that. Next, we have two programs, one called BizSpark and one called App Builder. And BizSpark is an awesome program for startups. Actually, I had a small software company before joining Microsoft, and I was a BizSpark member, and we provide tens of thousands of dollars of free software to BizSpark. So anybody in here currently a BizSpark member? A couple folks? Even better. That means a lot of opportunity here for folks to join. So you can either go on the BizSpark website, or you can contact me directly. Not my developer tools, get out of this mode. So BizSpark, we provide developer tools. You get access to Office, you get access to our cloud service. You get $150 credit a month to run on the cloud service. You get downloads of Windows if you want to go testing on Windows devices. So BizSpark gives you all of that. It's a free program, doesn't cost you anything. You just have to meet a few criteria. A startup, less than 5 years old, less than $1 million in annual revenue, and you have to be a privately held company. Ideally, we want to see that you're working on a product and not just a consulting company. You can sign up on the website. We also have these cards that you'll see the registration desk. And they have a nice QR code on them. You can just scan, and it'll bring you right to the website. And for the next program I'm going to talk about, that's on there as well. So BizSpark and App Builder, grab one of those at the registration desk. As long as you meet the criteria, you get approved for it, you have immediate access to download all the software. You also get free tokens if you want to be able to develop and deploy into the Windows Store for the phone or for Windows Store applications. We also have the App Builder program. So there's a few folks in here who are developers, so this probably will just apply to a few folks. The App Builder program is a developer rewards-based program that when you attend certain events or you book time, for example, with someone like myself, we all provide free time during a week called office hours, ohours.com. ohours.com/Alan. And on O Hours, everybody on my team does this. You can go on here and book free time with us during the week. I'll talk about anything development related, etc. If you have UX questions, you can talk to us about that. Even if the person that you talk to might not be a UX person, we can forward you off to the right folks to make sure your questions get answered as well. So that's something really cool that we do, and you can also find that on the App Builder site. And you build up different points. And by building up points on the App Builder site, you can get different rewards. You can get free UX consultant, you can get games, all sorts of free rewards, point style based system. And lastly, second to last, contact me at adamc@microsoft.com if you need anything. Anything that I've talked about, if you have any questions on BizSpark. In fact, if you are interested in the BizSpark program, it's probably easier to contact me directly than register through the site. My requirements are probably a little bit less lenient than having to go through the corporate process. And we can just talk briefly about it. And if you have all the requirements for it, I can send you a token that you can immediately register on the site for. So it's a little bit easier to go through me. I'm adamc@microsoft.com, easy to remember. And lastly, remember to validate your parking. If you don't, you're going to pay for parking on the way out. At the front desk, you can get the little tickets to validate your parking. If you forget, you can get out with a credit card. And if you don't have either of those, you might be walking. So make sure you please go to the front desk and get your little validation ticket. And she's probably at the front desk. I just want to thank Yesenia too, because she put a lot of this together. Thank you, Yesenia. Thanks, everybody, and enjoy your evening. Have a good night. I heard something. What was that? Hey, Yesenia. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So we're going to take seconds to turn the mic here and take it from there. Okay, so this is our agenda for this We've already done the registration, food and beverages, and we reminded you about the validation. We're going to go over the upcoming events in the community, sponsor messages, and speaker introduction, which will be done by Alberta, and then Q&A. We're doing a drawing for some templates for UX raffles, so I think you'll find those very helpful. And then we're having an after party at the Art House, and we hope to purchase a couple of pictures of beer and some appetizers for everyone, so please come and join us there. Okay, these are our hashtags, so if you guys could tweet, we'd love to see a very active wall going on. The main one is Nick, LAUX, so if you could please use that, then we can then consolidate all the tweets and create a Storify event, which is an archived sort of it's an archive of the tweets that go on during the event and the images too. So this is Nick, and I actually contacted him sort of out of the blue. He was talking about doing, we were talking about how your calendar was filling up. And I'm like, come to LA. And he's like, who are you? And then he recognized me from my Twitter feeds and stuff like that. And then we have a bunch of friends in common. So he's nice enough to come. And he recently tweeted out that he was looking forward to the lasers and the fireworks and kind of stuff like that we'll be having tonight, or we would not have tonight, we'd like to offer. Let's move to the next one. So this is for the raffle. This is for the flowchart and sitemap templates that we'll be giving away. And then we also have a discount code for everyone to use, so you can buy them at a discount too. So this is really nice thing. We're having the after party at the Art House. There's the address. It's also on the meetup site. And we couldn't do it without our volunteers. Last time I checked, we actually had 40 volunteers, although by the time I was doing the presentation, we only had 39. So I want to thank you, I want to say thanks to all of our volunteers, and if you could please stand up, I'd like to say thank you to them and acknowledge you. Are you guys already standing up? Yay, Cherry! It really takes a tremendous amount of work to put these events together, and it's very easy to have problems. So I want to help you. I want to thank you guys for all the help that you give us. We really appreciate it. So do we have any community announcements? There should be a microphone available to take any questions, but if there are any jobs available or events that are coming up that you guys want to share with us? Oh, yeah, raise your hands really high.
I'm easy because I'm in the front row. Yeah. So Scott, Philosophy is the company with an IE at the end if you haven't heard of us. We're hiring senior and director level user experience people, preferably lean UX practitioners. So yeah, email me or tweet at me or ask Crystal. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. SKOT.
And Scott is going to be on a career panel that we're doing shortly in January with Chris Chandler, Hannah from Capital Group, and Scott, and hopefully Angel Anderson will be the moderator, so that's very exciting. Are you still teaching at Jen Nelson? Yeah? So he's still teaching at Jen Nelson, which is very cool. Thank you for being active in the community.
Thank you.
Any other jobs, announcements, things like that? Oh, okay. Yes.
Hi, my name is Jean-François Blanchette. I'm a professor in the Department of Information Studies at UCLA. One of our graduates is Lynn Boyden, who co-founded this group. And I'm teaching a course next term on data entrepreneurship, by which I mean people who are using data at any point in the life cycle to create value, whether it's economic value, social value, institutional value, whether you're doing this by collecting new kinds of data, classifying it, giving it new kinds of access, preserving it, processing it, of course. I'm interested so if you're doing something like this, I'm looking for people to present in my class and talk about their projects. So I'm going to send an email to the list tomorrow, and if you want to respond to that, I'd be more than happy. I will advertise your talk in the departments and other departments like statistics, so you'll have some audience, and maybe you can recruit. We have an active program in informatics and several graduates that can work in businesses. So thank you.
That's great. You have an answer?
Hi, my name is Olivia. I'm looking for 2 or 3 UX practitioners doing desktop, web, and mobile projects. And freelance is okay, so look for the green coat after if you want some work.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Alex Mendelsohn. I work at Whisper, and we're hiring UI and UX positions right now. So if you guys want to join a Sequoia-backed company based in Santa Monica, building an anonymous social network, we'd love to have you.
Very cool. Lots of opportunities out there. Anyone else? Okay, come forward. If you have questions or
Hi, my name is Patrick. I work for a medical devices company, and we're actually looking for a user interface and UX designer to help with our clinician programmer. And this is actually a pretty cool project where we're creating the next generation of prosthetic controls. So we have devices that are actually implanted in patients, and we want to have a user interface that is able to stream that EMG data onto the interface and be able to change parameters and things like that for the doctors and clinicians. So if you're interested, look for me.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, here we go. John?
My name is John Ayers. We were going to have a holiday UX party, but we're going to actually push it to January and have a holiday New Year's party. It's going to just be amazing because it's going to be a lot of groups connected all together, including the amazing LA UX meetup. World IA Day LA. Check it out, World IA Day _LA. Tweet about it. It's February 15th, I believe. Is that correct? So check it out.
Very cool. Very cool. Anything else? That is cool. Good? Okay. So I wanted to let you know, for the past 2 years, LA has been sort of amazing by offering this activity with the Global Service Jam. Some of the people who normally have organized it are not in the area right now. So we're looking for somebody to kind of take on this project and make it happen, because we'd really like to see LA involved in the service design movement and that kind of thing. So if you're interested, step up and start working. Okay, so here are some upcoming events. We have GA's career counseling. The Digital Family Reunion is a holiday party coming up, and there's a promo code for you guys. Cal State Fullerton's classes, you can now enroll in them. They're starting in January, so act quickly. UCLA Extension, same thing. And then we have a couple of events that we're doing. Scott McDowell, Blurred Lines, Integrating Product Management and UX. And then on the 30th, we have what I mentioned earlier, the job panel or career panel with Chris Chandler, Hannah, Chris, and Scott right here. World IA Day was mentioned already. That's a really big deal. It'll be on Saturday. I think they're looking for a venue right now. So we want to get the word out, and if you guys want to be involved, volunteer, that kind of stuff, the group could use it. Global Service Jam, again, we need organizers for it. And the AI Summit is going to be in San Diego this year. We're very lucky that it's so close to home. So I encourage all of you to attend the IA Summit. And then if you're looking for what's happening in the community in UX, just go to my website, which is up there, and you'll see all the activities. This is showing what's happening in December. And sponsor announcements. So Microsoft has already talked, so we'll skip. them. And then we have visualize.
Yep.
And you need to show your slides. And thank you so much for your sponsorship. Provided all the food tonight. Yeah. And office supplies, all the stuff that you need to make it happen.
Hello everybody, good evening. I'm Sam and I'm with Weez Labs. Very excited to be here tonight. Thank you, Crystal, for having us. I want to tell you just a little bit about what we do, but before we do, I wanted to just touch briefly on something that is user experience related, and it's something that probably a lot of you being in this industry have realized in the past, but it's something that drove me absolutely crazy. And I didn't know if I was going insane at first when I first saw it, but I thought, you know, what the hell, maybe it's just in my mind. Finally, I talked to my designers and everything, and I'll kind of ask you guys first, you know, what do you guys find that is wrong with this icon? Does anybody know? This is probably, it's iOS 6, so it's a little bit outdated, but this was earlier this last year. Does anybody know the difference? Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and tell you guys. So, basically the difference is 2 pixels. And this was a little goof up by Apple, but they actually, I can go back and forth real quick here. Kind of see the one. Whoa. But yeah, that was something that everyone that looked at it, it made you kind of wonder, is there really something wrong with it, or you know, what's the difference? But it's all about the details. And at Weez Labs, that's really what we focus on, is the details. Whether it's just beginning and sitting down and talking with you guys, or listening to your idea, or helping you guys all the way through the process. It all depends on what you guys need, and that's really what we focus on. So we were founded in 2008, and we're a team of about 68 developers and designers. We help you guys all the way through from your initial creating your idea, or maybe you need to have a problem that needs to be solved, all the way to maybe getting acquired by a company. So we really have a solution and ability to walk you through the whole process and help you guys out. It's something that we're all very passionate and we love to do. We all have the experience of being around entrepreneurs. I mean, we're all that ourselves. And so again, we work with, you know, individuals, startups, or enterprises. So it all depends on what you guys need. Kind of do a quick run over as far as, you know, what is it that we really do. First, obviously, we listen. We hear more about what is your idea and how can we help you best. We have our kickoff meeting. We go through wireframes, the design. You know, that is a huge focus of what we do and a little bit of kind of our core ability. And then obviously we establish milestones. After that, oh sorry, skipped ahead really quick there. One of the biggest parts of what we do is to research and strategize. You know, you have an idea, you need to know if it's good or not, and we'll tell you. That's a big part of what we do. Again, then we have the development. Go through the kickoff meeting. We have the designs, establish milestones. We lock our developers in the room, and when they're finished, we let them out. So it's a fun process, and we really enjoy every little bit of it of what we do. And again, we're very excited to be here tonight. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to come find me. We'll be here all night. We're very excited to hear Nick speak. I've followed his blog for a while, so can't wait to hear what you have to say. And thank you again for having us tonight, guys.
Thank you so much. It sounds like a perfect sponsor to be involved with this particular event. So. Okay, so we're going to continue on with our sponsors. Okay, Pulse Viral, which is really cool. They're here today. And they're the ones who do the tweet balls, the live stream tweet balls with Instagram and regular Twitter accounts. So if you see anything really cool happening up on the walls, that's probably from them. So yeah, let's see. And then also Park Me has sponsored with us this evening. We're going to be doing some interesting collaborations going forward. And Tech Jobs LA is also a sponsor. They organize a Tech Jobs fair for the community, and it's run by the community. And they tonight are providing video production services. Noel, do you want to say anything? Good. Okay. UX kits, that's what we're giving away in the drawing today, these templates. And then also here you can see the We Love LAUX is the discount promo code to get 20% off. So you have exactly 1 full week to take advantage of that discount. And Convey UX is coming up. They were very kind to flying down for our Don Norman events. And they gave away a free ticket, and I believe they may be giving away another one, but we'll find out soon. And then we have a company that's been helping us, and I want to show you quickly a little bit about what they do. If this works. So we are currently working with them on increasing our visibility in the community. And Sylvia, would you like to come up and say a word or two? Yeah, okay. So I think that said a lot. And thank you for all of your the incredible amount of consulting advice and guidance and amazing production quality work you've done for us.
My pleasure, everybody.
And I want to thank Media Contour. They recently, they've been covering us for a couple of years now, and UX Magazine likes their material about us so much that they have now started covering our events too through Media Contour. So a valuable small relationship bloomed into this really fantastic thing for us. So the first article that appeared was one on Stephen Portugal that we recently did at WeWork. So I want to thank Media Contour and UX Magazines. And Radio X, UX Radio is also a media sponsor. And they're really, Laura, who works with this, is working very hard right now on the World Information Architecture Day, which is February 15th on a Saturday. So hopefully everyone here can attend, and we need sponsors for that. And I just want to let you know we love our volunteers, and thank you so much for helping make this event happen. And now we're ready for Alberta to introduce Nick Finck.
Not yet, actually. Not yet. Can we switch this over to HDMI2? I'm not sure. VGA? Okay. All right. Before I introduce our guest tonight, I just wanted to take a second to say thank you to Crystal, who is always so very, no, the one, it was slide one, please. Yeah, it has, okay. On slide one. Okay, like this. So, the black is here. So I just wanted to say thank you to Crystal, who really works without stopping from month to month to month, and she bounces from event to event to make it possible for all of us that are here. And she's always very generous and ready to acknowledge everybody who works on this event, but it really is important that we acknowledge what she does, which is making these things possible, because she really is the real spirit behind the LA UX meetup. So thank you, Crystal. And now our guest. Our guest is Nick Finck, who has been in UX for 18 years, which means technically he was in UX before UX existed. He didn't quite invent the term UX, because as we heard last month, it was Don Norman who invented that. But Nick is the person who designed the first iPhone app, so he knows something about design and how people interact with them. He's one of the nicest folks in UX you'll ever meet. He's always very available, very approachable. You can ask him anything. He knows everything about everything, and he knows anybody, and he's the most generous with his knowledge and connections and time. And I know something about that because we spent an evening going over my slides a month or two ago. He really is phenomenal. So Nick has had a really interesting career. He's done in-house, he's done in-agency, and most recently he landed a job at a super secret company that we cannot name, but that might or might not have something to do with flying objects that deliver other objects, but we cannot talk about that, so I'm not saying anything. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Nick Finck.
Drones deliver.
So I bet some of you might be wondering, who the heck is this guy? So yes, my name is Nick Finck. I've been doing this for about 18 years. I started doing information architecture before I even knew what information architecture was called and what it was about.
And that was attributed to my friend Christina Lipke, who told me, you are doing information marketing. And if anybody remembers the history or timeline of user experience, that was before we really had a thing going on called user experience, or at least a profession. The phrase was coined. So I do have a hashtag, but I'm not gonna, we don't have to go through that. I am the senior manager for user experience at Amazon AWS. If anybody wants to learn more about AWS, I definitely recommend going to aws.amazon.com. And if you have questions about it, I recommend going to the same site. My personal site is nickfinck.com. I have tweeted a few times on this account called Finck, or Nick F here. Apparently, as of Saturday, I've actually been on Twitter for 7 years. So there's some history there. Hopefully, you can pull it up on Twitter. And it's true. I am a UX bullfighter. This was a title given to me from a client called Microsoft. And that was back in the day. And mostly for my skills to be able to kind of take difficult situations and somehow hold up like a little red cape and just kind of go flying on by. Kind of a quick outline. I'm going to start talking about details, and you'll see what I mean by that. And then we're going to talk about simplification. We'll go into process, and then from there, we're going to kind of talk about research, because it's pretty important to user experience. And then we're going to talk about what our job is. By the time we're done with this, we're hopefully going to change the world. Is everybody on board with that? Yeah. Yep. All right, cool. So I want to start out with a quick note about user experience. And I know you guys have already had several talks like Norman and other folks. So this may be a rehash, but for those who haven't been to this talk, I want to kind of make sure I clarify a few things. For example, this is user interface. So buttons, widgets, letters, and any kind of interaction a person has with the system. It doesn't have to be digital. A lot of times we think of user experience design being a digital environment, but it is not necessarily that. Now, if we want to look at user experience, so if this is UI, this is user experience. To be more specific, that is user experience. Okay, that is what somebody experiences as they're using it. It is something subjective. It's not something we control, and it can change. It's dynamic. I may have a bad day one day, hate using this app, hate reporting expenses or whatever, and then the next day I have a great day and it's actually a really great app. So you can have dynamic experience with the same system without the system changing. The system also does change, right? Okay, now that that's out of the way, I want to talk about a little bit about design and details. One of our sponsors talked a little bit about the details are very important. That's kind of what I want to get into. And it kind of goes back to this guy that a lot of folks have probably come across, and if you've done some studying in the field of user experience or design, more specifically, you may have found your way to the root system of this, and it starts with this guy named Dieter Rams. And he talks about how every little detail is so important inside of an experience. And I'm not just talking about UI. I'm not talking about what's the label on the button, does the, is the number 1 or 2 pixels over. And by the way, there is research that can tell you whether a search field is 2 pixels too small, 2 pixels too large, based on how many people are actually using that, search. So you can dice it all the way down to that granular level of detail. But what we're really talking about here is that we really need to pay attention to everything we're putting in front of somebody that's interacting with our user interfaces, that is having that user experience. We need to pay attention to not just like minutia or superfluous stuff. We need to pay attention to how we're presented to them, at what state. Do we need to present all these things at once? Can they be distributed to them? I want to show some examples real quick here. How many people have used the site Pinterest? A few people? Okay. So Pinterest is this site where you can kind of take these images. Now, if you notice this scrolling here, you'll see these color blocks. These color blocks are actually loading up the primary color in the image before the image is actually loaded. So historically what we would do is we'd have like a load screen or some kind of little ticker kind of saying there's something processing here, or just show a blank little box, and then eventually the images load up because that's all about bandwidth, right? Responsiveness of your browser. Instead, they decided to give you a little bit of a moment of delight to show you this beautiful like color, because these are great colors. Every photo has some amazing colors. So they chose to show that. Now another example, if anybody's used Mint, this is the iPad app. Mint chose to design something in what would be a traditional pie chart. But instead of like having to hover and kind of see information, and the information goes to the right or to the left or above, depending on where you have real estate. And keep in mind this goes landscape and portrait, right? So you have to kind of consider all these facts into it. The pie chart itself changes. So the information is always consistently placed for these, so they don't have to look around or see where it popped up next. It's not a experiment, an exploratory game that we're going to play with for the user's eye. We keep them in one spot and we allow the interface to pivot around what we're trying to do. Okay? So pretty interesting technique. Another example here, and pardon the lag here, I was using an app that used Wi-Fi, and at the time it was a little bit laggy, but this is paper. How many people here have used paper? So you'll know that it's very much the epitome of skeuomorphism, right? These are interfaces that are designed to look like real objects, right? The thing that's interesting about this is, let's leave aside the skeuomorphism and look at the way this interacts with me, the way that I open up a book. It doesn't just load a screen, right? It pops up, it loads like a sheet of paper. So if they're going to take it, might as well take it all the way, right? I love this thing. It's a very beautiful app. And then I can, what I'll show you here is you kind of zoom in and like load it full screen and use it just like any other sketch app. Another app is an app that one of my former teams worked on at a company called Uber is now Lily Digital. CNN Money is specific. CNN Money has these things they call blades. Now this is not the Launchpad, by the way, I'll say that. But these are blades here, and you can see them expanded here. Now, when we designed this, as user experience designer, we're just doing wireframes. What do you typically see? Anybody? What's the first wireframe you'd give somebody for something like this? Sketch. Sketch? Okay, that's a good answer actually. But what you give them typically is this state, and then you give them this state, right? You show this with these blades, and then you show them this, and then there might be a little annotation like, annotation 12 says, when a user taps on this, it loads up a blade and it shows this, right? That's very baseline, right? That's, in some jobs, that's about all we have time for. We don't have time to go into the details, the nuances. What this team did is said, well, okay, that's great and fine, and it can get us to a baseline. But what actually happens here is there's about 100 states from when you tap this to when this shows up. And it's not just about how fast this thing moves across the screen. It's about, do I double tap? Do I tap, hold, drag, and drop? Do I tap and kind of flick, so to speak? How does this interface respond? Does it just immediately pop open, like one state here, one state there? Or does it actually kind of bounce open, right? Now, what happens if I have all these open and I double tap this one right on the edge here where I can interact with it? Does it close? Does this become bigger? There's so many questions here, right? So the way you would do that in a static wireframe is by showing basically a storyboard, right? You would show all these different states of this interaction. You would show the start state. Here, you would show the end state, and there would be about 20 different wireframes in between showing all this. That's a lot of work to do, right? It's a lot of boxes and arrows, right? So the beauty of this is you're designing a native platform. You know where it's going to land. You know what the end product is going to be. We work with our engineers. We can actually build a prototype without even completing the design. Maybe I don't even have the colors locked in or anything else. And I don't necessarily know what's going to be on the screen, but I do know there's going to be blades in this overall concept of architecture, information architecture, which I'll get to later. And I could show him, okay, these different states, and this is what I want to do, and I want it to bounce, and I want it to move this fast. And he could go back and he designs an app. He builds an app of code, comes back to me and shows these like gray, yellow, blue, different kind of bars. There's no content, no detail to them or anything, and maybe even the tap target isn't even the same spot that's going to be in the end result. But I'm able to kind of double tap and drag and flick and all this kind of stuff and see exactly how it responds. And I can say, you know what, actually that moves a little too fast, let's slow that down. Or, you know, it doesn't move fast enough, or it needs to bounce at the end, or it needs to start fast and slow down as it gets to the end of that animation, right? These are all about transitions. This is all the devil in the details. This is about nuances and why every little pixel matters, right? This kind of stuff matters. We can't skip it. We can't just keyframe it and expect somebody to fill the gaps in between. We need to work with developers to build prototypes that actually detail this stuff, okay? Another app, CNN. Has anybody here used the CNN tablet app? Okay, has anybody ever taken it and gone from landscape to portrait? No hands, or maybe a few? Okay, so what happens, and I wish I had this here to show you, but basically, instead of just, you know, flipping the device and then it sort of just redraws this vertical portrait format from a landscape, what it actually does is all these tiles pivot and slide into place where they're going to be. If they need to, like, in some cases, you can kind of see that they're the same proportionate, and in other cases, they might be slightly different aspect ratios. There's other things that tend to move. Sometimes we'll have some things that are two things across, and then end up being two things vertical, two grid components. This is well thought through, and it's something the user wouldn't even really notice. The funny thing is if you take them into a usability study, and you ask them to turn the tablet from portrait to landscape, they may respond to things like, I don't know, it's kind of a weird experience. I don't understand what happened, and I'm not sure what bugged me about it, but it bugged me. Well, yeah, you saw something here, and then the next second it was over there. And it didn't give you any kind of indication or affordance to say, this item has moved over here and has tilted or shifted or pivoted, right? So that's something that was thought through, the nuances of that design. Anybody here have the Target app for iPhone? A few people? Yeah. So this app is smart enough to identify, if you allow it and give it permissions to basically determine where your location is, it can actually identify when you're near a Target store, in the parking lot even. And the thing about this is that it doesn't just say, okay, you're near a store, great, cool, here's the information about the store or whatever, but it actually changes the entire navigation to be contextually based. So it actually tells me what I can do in the store. Now, one of the cool things about this is I can create a shopping list on a desktop website, go to the app, load up that information, and go into the store and actually have that same shopping list load up on my app. And then it tells me, not as the crow flies, but exactly, precisely in the store, where I can walk to get to those items on my shopping list and get out of the store the quickest. It's very contrary to most retail stores and what they want to do, right? They want to keep you there, right? And in fact, the original Target designs, just lost my display. The original Target designs, here we go. Originally, the floor plan designs were designed so that you would kind of do this sort of track, this circuit of the store. Anybody ever been in IKEA? That's like the ultimate, you know, epitome of a track or a circuit inside of a retail store. These guys are like, let's just make life easier for the user. It's just one of those nuances of thinking about it. Another example is an app that I worked on, the REI Ski and Snow Report app. Originally, this app had, it was a web-based, a web iframe, which of course you can even barely get into an app store now. It's actually native. One of the interesting things was the data was, you know, so-so. Like we did a usability study and we did some user research and found out that you know, people liked the app, but like it wasn't that much better than the competitors. Well, you know, what were the challenges? Like, oh well, you know, the information with the snowfall and how many inches were at different ski resort. By the way, if I didn't explain clearly, this is an app where you go to find out like where like the powder is, right? You go to see where the fresh stuff is to go skiing and snowboarding, and it gives you all these different resorts, location-based, and then you can pick, you know, and make favorites and whatnot. So they're like, the data's not that great. And so we did a lot of research. It's like, well, where are we getting this data? Anybody guess where we're getting that data?
Well, Yahoo.
Government, Weather Channel, the resorts. The resorts, of course, the resorts are going to give this information to us. And guess what happens on the weekend? Slightly exaggerated snowfall. So the resort information is not completely accurate, right? And this is a challenge that skiers and snowboarders have, because literally across the valley, somehow it managed to snow 2 extra inches. I don't know how that works, but somehow magically it has happened. But you know, so there's a lot of complication with that. We also found out that these users didn't even use this device. Like we thought they'd plan like a month out and all this kind of stuff, and they'd use it on the mountain, all this different information. No, we found out, no, this is their alarm clock. They wake up in the morning, they don't even roll out of bed, they like reach their hand over, feel around on the end table or the nightstand, grab their phone, load up the app, look for the data to see where they're going to that day because they were going to go skiing and snowboarding already. They just didn't know what resort to go to. So what we did is there's this organization, NOAA, reports weather, doesn't do so well on snow. There's also this other organization called National Avalanche Center, which happened to be located anywhere that there is actually skiing and snowboarding. Because guess what? When there's avalanche problems, it's usually with people, and those people are usually at resorts. So we looked at their data, and their data said, you know, 6 inches, 6 inches, and then like 600 feet, and then 2 inches. And then back to 6 inches, 6 inches. What, you know, we kept seeing this in their data, and we couldn't figure out why there's this anomaly. So we talked to them, and we did this interview with them, and they were like, well, we're kind of short-staffed, and we don't really have time to normalize the data. I'm like, well, how's this data coming in? Like, how are you recording? They have these instruments that are so sensitive. They actually, when it's not snowing, they report fall of snow from the trees. So you could get like a 200-foot snowfall, like somehow, magically, in a moment, and it would disappear. So if you think about REI service, it's all about that, right? It's all about the weather and the snowfall and the, you know, how the rivers are doing and whatever sports and whatever recreation is going on. It's all related to the weather and that sort of stuff. So building a service for them is pretty critical. And then when it came down to all this data, because we could basically make this thing really complex. There's a lot of information here, even just the locations. All of this was actually tested with the users to figure out what was the most critical data for them and presenting them just the minimal amount of data and no more. Not going beyond where we need to go. Just enough for them to get their job done and not overwhelming them with a lot of information that wasn't necessary. Or it was nice, but not critical, right? So I want to talk about that, design and simplification. Again, let's go back to Peter, right? He's the master of this. He is talking about simplifying down the design to its bare minimal until you can't take anything else away and it stops becoming usable. It stops becoming useful. It stops becoming coherent. So, kind of looking at this simplicity model of distilling this stuff down to its basic bare components. There's definitely extremes we could take that. And when we look at the organization of information, we start thinking about information architecture. We start thinking about things like, for example, CNN, or sorry, Showtime, Anytime, and their navigation system. So this is another group at Deloitte Digital also did this, and a good friend of mine. And they had their phone, iPhone app released. They had their iPad app released, and they were now working on their Android tablet and Android handset. And this particular UX designer was more what I would call information architecture oriented, meaning his discipline was mostly focused on information architecture, although he was a UX designer and could do a lot of different things. He was the first person to call out, like, well, why is it that your navigation is like, you know, Apple, kind of an apple, this is a little bit like, I don't know, some other kind of weird fruit, this is sort of a subtype of apple, another subtype of apple, I don't know what that is, this thing, and this is completely like a tree. Like it's not even anything related to that kind of category, right? So there's this huge issue with the information architecture of these apps that were already out in the marketplace and their website. And it was called out to them. I think to this day they still haven't changed it, which is kind of interesting. But the concept is we don't, just because it's like the #1 grossing thing inside of your business doesn't mean it needs to be in the primary nav, right? It doesn't need to be surfaced. It doesn't need to take primary residence over the way people navigate to information. It's better to focus on how people think. What's their mental model of this navigation? It's something that they're familiar with, something that can resonate with them, and allow them to, basically explore that navigational system, that hierarchy, right? And so, in the world of simplification, let's simplify down the navigation so that it's actually a true hierarchy, and allow people to find that information underneath that hierarchy. It doesn't have to be buried or hidden. It can be exposed. It just doesn't have to have like this weird dynamic, cross-linked, deep-linked sort of things that are called out that aren't actually relevant to how a user really thinks in their mental model about how to navigate this stuff. So that was simplification of navigation. In visual design, it's very easy for us to go too far, to take it to the extreme of simplification, to the point where I don't even know what it is, right? So let me show you an example. This is a weather app. My first reaction to this weather app is that I have the power to control the weather. Because this navigation thing makes me feel like, if you think of the metaphor, that I can actually change this, because I really don't know what that is, a cloud and a star, maybe that's a snowflake, maybe it's snowing, and I can change it to go and shoot lightning instead, or rain down fire and brimstone, I'm not sure what. But there's no context for this. There's no information to tell me what that means. Now, of course, if you actually use the app, you would see that it's not something you can control, it's something that reports to you. But this is a good example of kind of going too far. We want that beautiful, elegant, sleek, I'll call it Apple experience, right? Where it's just the basics. But we take it so far that it becomes useless. And it doesn't actually provide value. It doesn't communicate the proper information to us. So when we think in the world of information architecture, and kind of jumping back to that and talking about navigation and talking about simplifying things and removing, whether we address the gaps in the information we're communicating on to, let's say, a developer. When I talk about the prototype example, you look at things like information architecture and building a house, right? There's this concept of planning, right? And it's amazing to me that we can oversimplify our design process to the point where we're not even planning anymore, right? How many people have been to the Winchester house? Okay, so that's this guy, right? At first glance, if you're on the street level, it looks just like a big old Victorian mansion sort of sprawling sort of thing. It looks pretty large, actually. But then you see the rest of it as you go exploring. And these are doorways to open pits, and stairs that go to nothing, and windows that open to floors that are concrete, and it's all because this developer was told to just go ahead and build because there was a curse on the house, and I guess all the people that a Winchester gun was shot was going to haunt the house if the construction never stopped. And so the widow at the time was like, just go and build, I don't care, figure it out. And so he just started building, there was no planning, and this is the Frankenstein sites that we end up with today, right? This is the chaos, this is the mess. I mean, I bet you there's entire sections of this house we can't even access anymore, right? Because there was no thorough planning. There was no paying attention to the information architecture and the nuances of information architecture. I can't tell you the number of times I've built a site where somebody said, oh yeah, the architecture's already done, here you go, and it's maybe the guy who had the idea, the product guy that started the startup, or maybe it's a business guy, and he's like, I already did it, here's a Visio file, there's the architecture, it's already thought through. I get through, we start designing this whole thing, we start building it, and then we find out there's entire pages of screens and things we never even heard of before, and are completely missing and not considered in architecture. And now we have to band-aid them on, right? This is paying attention to nuances of that architecture. Can you imagine if the experience of using this Winchester house without that planning was, on par with, say, going somewhere like here and there was no planning? Can you imagine what chaos would ensue? That would be wild, right? I mean, we already have the challenges of, our kids are with us, they're in line, we want to make sure they're comfortable and not complaining, and that we get onto the ride. If there was no planning, this place would be a disaster. There's a lot of planning that went into this, right? So that's something that we have to consider, is not just design, but architecture. I want to talk about design process. So we kind of live in this weird dynamic, this weird world where our process is driven by a couple key things. Right now, I feel that in most websites, most apps, most mobile websites, responsive, whatever you want to call it, software, that we're driving all this by mostly features, mostly version numbers, right? Because you've got to release a product next month in time for, I don't know, Black Friday or whatever, right? And Cyber Monday, and we got to ship some features, and it's got to be better than the competition, and we also need to at least be on par with the competition to have the same features they have, plus maybe a couple extra, and we got to call it like the 3.0 version, right? It's all about versions and features. Think about how hard it is to sell. Hey guys, guess what? You can download version 5.0, and we have these extra 6 features that do these kind of widgety things that may be useful to you. That's pretty hard to sell, right? We kind of need to move beyond that. And this is all driven by kind of the way we build and design software. I mean, we are basically the makers of this, right? So when we look at things like features and version numbers, they're not really improving the user experience, they're just sort of adding to it. This is a visualization of basically a check-in of files within a game. I think it's Minecraft, but I'm not 100% sure. And this is what it looks like when a couple developers are working on it. You can kind of see in the background here, there's these like little heads floating around. Those are actually the developers. And they're interacting with all these tree branches. And anytime you see a major shift, it means they did some major refactoring. And at some point, they, I think it was earlier in the video actually, that they completely overhauled the whole thing, and the whole entire tree just like folded in on itself and folded out again. And it was a lot more simplified. But this is what developers do. This is how they work. This is how they operate. Okay? And these features and these functionality, releasing files that are updated with new capabilities, they're not necessarily meeting or improving the user experience. They're not really helping our customers do their job, right? They're solving a problem, they're fixing a bug, they're keeping parity with the competition. It's far more natural to actually design and sell the user experience. I think this is why Apple was so successful. They sold the experience. They didn't sell the product, right? Look at like what happened with the iPod. How did they market that thing? They marketed the experience. This is a game changer back then, right? Now it's kind of commonplace. But we still are lost in, oh, we need this UX thing, but we're not sure how to do it. Hey, can you release a bunch of features? Right? We're still locked in that world. And we need to start seeing beyond that and look at how we can actually improve the customer experience. Now, of course, we can't really fully understand the customer experience if we're not really fully understanding the users, right? The customers themselves. So let's talk about research. So we need to actually observe how people use it. We can't be tucked in away in some office somewhere and somebody says, hey, can you tell us how satisfied our customers are? It's like, oh, sure, let me create a survey and throw that out to our customers and hope that that solves all our problems. That's the moment that you intercept them is the moment that they're distracted from their experience. The feedback you get is very limited, it's very narrow. If they're having a bad experience, man, you hear all about it. And it might not be anything you can fix. If they're having a great experience, they probably won't even fill out the survey. That's not how we should operate. We need to be in front of the user. The people are actually using our systems. We need to observe them because there's so much information that is lost when we're not observing them firsthand. For example, a company I worked for, Blink UX, also involved with the Convey conference that was mentioned earlier. They did a study before, during, and after the Connect was released. Their study, here's my screen again, Their study was done over, I believe, 200 households in 7 countries worldwide. That's a massive study, and that's only one part of their study. They had a whole in-studio sort of research that was being done. How many people here have used the Connect? Okay. How many people have used the new one? Okay. Well, in the Connect, at the time this is being released, the way the menu works is you wait. So what I'm doing right now is what we call the crazy Western American wave. This is what we do in the US. This is how you wave, right? This is how we wave in Japan. Very different, right? The Connect now has to respond to that, right? This is something that we're not going to immediately see if we're sending surveys over the wall and expecting some sort of feedback. My Connect doesn't work so well. I'm not sure why. That's kind of what we would get, right? We wouldn't know until we're there in the house. We watch people, like 5 people in a room try to set up Connect. It was like, this was before Connect was even marketed, right? Like nobody even knew this interface existed, and we just said, hey, can we do this study? We're going to be there on this date. We're like, sure. We show up and we go, here's a box. Pretend it's Christmas. And they're trying to open a package of a Bowie knife because they can't figure out how to open it. They're trying to jam the Connect sensor into a USB port because it looks kind of like it. There's all kinds of issues that have to be solved, and none of that would have occurred if we hadn't done that firsthand empirical research, that firsthand observation. At that same company, Blink, this is their coffee maker. This is a redesigned coffee maker. The original coffee maker did not have all this Sharpie silver line marker you see here. Is more of it around that you can't see.
It's annotated.
It's an annotated coffee maker because the manufacturer thought they would simplify this iconography down, that people would get it universally, and somehow they'd be able to ship a product that wouldn't have to change from English to Japanese and whatever else. At least that's my theory. That's the only speculation I can make on that. But instead, of course, our researchers are like, well, this is a problem. Let's fix it. And so this is what they're doing, okay? And then the next thing, of course, is this giant thing here telling you how to actually maintain the damn thing, right? Which should be pretty much intuitive, but instead they have to actually post this because it's not, right? And then, of course, the one digital interface in this entire experience is hold out coffee cup, receive bacon. Right? What the heck does that icon mean? I don't know. And of course, how do they solve that problem? They put the manual open to the page to decipher the icon to human readable English. Okay?
More power on.
These are researchers. These are people who really know what they're doing, right? And so they're finding the hack. I don't think all customers who bought this machine are going to do this. This is a big problem. We need to look for these hacks. We need to see how people are adopting our products and changing things and writing on them, putting duct tape on them, using them for things we didn't even imagine we thought they would be used for, to really understand what their challenges are and what hurdles they're going through. Okay? There's ways to observe that. One of the things that I've given talks about is, for example, doing like a service blueprint. This is one we did for a massive retail chain, not one I've already mentioned, but it's just like a simple process. But this is the extent of that entire service for that particular process. And it's pretty involved. There's all kinds of companies involved. There's all kinds of media. There's all kinds of interactions here. And this is like only a fraction of the service blueprint. But this is what can be created to help guide us and help map out sort of what's happening. Because it's not just like, oh, we're going to launch a service and it's going to do this and people can now ship from the store or whatever, right? What's that commercial? Just ship it, right? Ship my pants. Yeah, I love that. But it's like there's this whole thing in the back end that, like the back end systems that are going on that are allowing that to be, possible, right? So we need to map that out and see where all the touch points are and understand how people are, how the customers are interacting with that. So now I'm going to pivot into another part of the presentation. This is what I would describe as Act 2. It is not something that was written into the description and is intentional. This goes a little bit deeper. We go from the nuances and details of everyday user experience design into a bigger issue. And there it goes. I can just say that and it'll just happen. And it's really about our job, right? Our role as a user experience designer. You know, we could argue about whether user experience design includes things like information architecture, content strategy, whether product management is considered user experience discipline, or prototyping is part of that or not. We could argue until we're blue in the face whether information architecture is a discipline or not. I don't care. But our job as user experience designers has a very clear, succinct point. We're here for the user. We're here for the customer. Let's go back to our friend Don, right? This is what he was talking about, right? It's not just about making something understandable or easy to use. It's about adding joy and excitement, right? It's about adding pleasure, fun, and beauty. That's the user experience, right? It's an objective kind of response to something, right? It's a deeper story here. It goes beyond even what Don was talking about, right? It goes and impacts us all. Here's an example. So these kids are actually using an iPad to help them learn. They suffer from a learning impairment. And these iPads and this app was designed to help them. And it wasn't, you can't just throw just like a normal, typical learning app in front of them and expect them to pick this up. They had some greater challenges than that. And so somebody thought through this and said, there's a problem to solve here that's going to help these kids. And so this entire school has iPads to help them through that process. Technology is impacting our lives in ways we never even thought of, right? Like, here's an example. This is when they announced the Pope back in 2005. Here's a flip phone. I think there's somebody with a bit of a blue glow. You might be looking up on, and there's something there that looks like it might be, I don't know, some old school device. Here's 2013. These are not candles, these are not flashlights, these are mobile devices, and that's not bad. Or at least I think it is. That's how much things have changed in just those few years, 2005 to 2013. It's impacting us in a major way. Technology is moving so fast that what we thought was going to be the solution for our business yesterday is no longer a solution today, right? And it's like a game of catch-up almost, right? So here's the interesting thing. I'm going to jump from talking about religion to just talking about Darwin. You know, it's about who's adaptable, right? That's how we survive. We can adapt to this changing technology. When my company, Blue Flavor, way back in the day, heard about the announcement of the iPhone and that the web was going to be the software platform for the iPhone, the first thing we did is we released the first ever, or at least one of the first ever apps for the iPhone that was a mobile web app. And it was like a day or two after the iPhone actually was available in stores. That's adapting to change. It's a rapid, crazy pace. It's like a roller coaster. It's like, it's trying to stay in front of that. It's almost impossible, right? And really, we're not really even adapting. You know, we're barely existing in this case. As far as all of us and how we're looking at technology, how we're thinking about how it plays into business, how it plays into people's lives. This, by the way, is the most endangered species on the planet aside from the panda, I think. So, you know, there's a guy named Mike who talks about this a lot, right? Look at our responsibility as designers, what we owe to the public, why our design decisions impact all these lives, and what responsibility we need to take for that, right? Because right now, like, it's like we're looking at it without that responsibility, and we're just kind of like, okay, lobbing something over the fence at the next developer just because it's a feature release, right? As one researcher said, it's not so much that we're just like swimming in this like sea of technology, it's that it's a tsunami and it's hitting us, right? And we're just trying to stay afloat in this wave. We're trying to have the right skill sets so that we can do web experiences and mobile experiences, that we understand native, that we understand, you know, what the new technology is for Google Glass and Xbox, you know, One or whatever, right? Like all that, we're still trying to adapt to that, right? And it doesn't just impact us on a level of just understanding the technology and how to build and design for it, but it impacts our lives, right? I remember when I took a job just kind of getting into user experience field, and they talked a lot about work-life balance. I'd argue that today it's actually work-life and technology balance. Okay, let me show you a little video here. And this gal went a day without a phone. Bunch of friends. Everybody's got a phone out, right? Right? I've been there. How many people have been there? Right? Like they've been in that experience where it's like capturing a moment is more important than the moment itself. Girl's not even using the swing set. I want to take a photo of my drink. Oh wait, hold on, let me close. I gotta tweet this, hold on. Not a single high five. Sad, really. Whole set goes by. This is my favorite one. Wait for it. And then the day's finally over. I love her eyes in this. She's just like, really? Seriously? So, we're mired in a design culture that either doesn't understand its responsibility to everybody who uses our services and apps. And the worst part is that if they don't care enough about their job to really understand the impact of what they're designing and how it's going to impact the people that are going to use it. You design an experience that I've never tested it with the user. I've never observed the user using the existing experience. I've never talked to the user. Don't even understand who the user is. Have a theory driven by marketing data, but don't really know who is buying your product. That's pretty harsh, right? And it's not just that, right? It's about how this is impacting people's lives. This could literally be a life and death thing. I've seen people build apps for brain surgeons. I've seen people build apps for hazmat people. This impacts lives, whether that experience is good, efficient, and good enough, or better than that. It actually helps people do their jobs. It literally can impact people's lives. So it's up to us, it's up to ourselves to stop thinking this way, to stop being destructive, to stop basically tearing down essentially the walls of society with technology. And we can't solve this problem by the same way of thinking that we had when we created it, right? Einstein quote, I love this. We have to think differently, essentially, is what he's saying, right? This is way before Steve Jobs, okay? This has been around for a long time. And what I propose to you as user experience designers in the field, to think about the nuances of your job and move beyond that and think about how it's going to impact not just people, not just someone, a person, a user, a few people, a group of people, even if your app has 5 users, but actually how it's going to impact humanity. How is this going to have a long-term effect on those users, the people that have to use it after them? Are they going to have to onboard people? Are they going to have to train people? Are kids going to be impacted? Are we going to not, pay attention to what's going on for kids because we have some app that can solve that problem for us? Is that really solving a problem, or is it making a new one? This is what I think user experience design is about. Okay? And as Mike says, we work in the service of, design works in the service of a better world, right? It always has, and it should. I think we lost sight of that somewhere along the way of releasing features of products that get abandoned and never adapted or never used or not properly designed, not properly usable for the audience that we're building for, right? And this is having a huge impact. It's sort of like the wasteland. Like, how many thousands of apps have had only a few downloads, right? It's kind of ridiculous. We don't need to crank out 1,000 apps just to say we have 1,000 apps in our app store. We need to create apps that actually have some music box going on, have an actual impact on those users and helping them do their jobs, right? I think it's a mistake for us to boast about those kinds of numbers. And you know, the funny thing is we're the creators of this. As designers, we're involved in this just as much as anybody else, as much as the business owner, as much as the technical engineer or anybody else, right? Let's give it a second. And so it's our responsibility. I'm going to channel another person here. Guy has a lot of good advice. Just a second. Maybe not. We're the makers of our own state. We don't need to wait for the general community to kind of say, this is wrong and we need to fix it. We need to stop releasing apps. We need to focus on what matters to people and helps people do their jobs and helps people actually move ahead in life and get beyond their challenges that they're faced with, whether it's a disease, disability, or whatever it might be. And you know, this whole thing of engineers versus designers versus developers versus MBAs and business owners and startups and big companies needs to go away. We need to think about it as working collectively to solve a greater problem. We need to be more collaborative. We need to work together because it's really our user experience. We are designers in it. And it's the user who has that subjective view of it. And it's up to us to create something that improves that experience that they have. So again, as I said at the start of the talk, we can actually change the world. It's up to us. Thank you.
We have some time for questions. We do. Before we ask Nick some questions, we open for questions from the public. A couple of reminders. We are going to have a drawing for some template kits that we're going to do right after the Q&A. And please, 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 when you leave the room, if you brought in food and drinks and bottles of water, take them with you and drop them in the trash cans outside. Thank you. So do we have any questions for Nick?
Question over there.
All right.
When you were talking about observing customer behavior, I think the term you used is the hacks. To me that's I have a marketing background, so to me that's basic marketing to see first of all what are the benefits, to see how the customer is using it, and then a little bit later on you talk about different versions. Well, if we're going to improve something, what should we do? So I mean, if I worked with a company that had designers on it, and rather than it just being like outsourced to someplace else, what do you think is preventing from marketing people? I mean, I would be dragging you guys with me to as many customers as I could. What do you think is preventing them from doing that?
Well, I don't know if there's something particularly preventing anybody from doing anything. We're the makers of our own destiny, right? So that said, I think we are kind of caught up in this kind of way of the status quo. We kind of need to move beyond that, right? So, for example, like I'll pick on automotive. Anybody in automotive here? There's a few people that I think. So I'm just picking on you guys for a moment. Right now we sell automotive in the world of, well, it has seat recliners or seat warmers, or it has like special traction and curve a corner, right? This is all feature-based selling, right? And there's some automotive manufacturers that are now starting to sell the experience. What does it mean to drive this car? What does it do for you, right? And that's kind of an interesting take, because it's a very utilitarian product, right? It's solving our commute challenge, right? But in some cases, it's doing more than that. You buy this car not because it's a commuter car, because it's a statement, maybe, in some cases. In other cases, it could actually be helping people, like you're buying a bus or something. You'd be amazed at the transit systems around the world and how much they can use bus. So, this is kind of all going back to how do we think about this? There's an interesting TED talk, and I'm probably going to butcher his name. I think it's like Philip or something like that. It's probably not his last name, but he gave a talk on starting with the why. And he talked about like all these different companies and Wright Brothers, Apple, all sorts of stuff, and explained how starting with the why was really what made this company successful, and is all from kind of the marketing perspective. And I think that's what we need to do, is ask ourselves, why are we doing this? I mean, when I worked at Blue Flavor, we had a lot of startups that came to us, and they had all these great app ideas. And it's easy to quickly go like, well, isn't that just like this? And they're like, yeah, it's like that with this extra thing thrown in. It's like, great. What problem is it solving, though, if I could do both of these things right now? Is it actually a better experience? Is it, because it can pull these two things together, is it easier now to do this thing? There's a lot of that, right? And we as user experience designers need to ask those questions, because nobody else is right now. We've got business people who are like, we think we need to do this, and they're getting the best feedback they can from their customers. They're getting best feedback they can from the people in the trenches that sell the products and market the products and all this. So it's not like they're completely uninformed. It's just that we're not really listening to our users and also thinking about the greater why. Of why are we doing this? Why are we releasing this service into the world? Do we feel like it's going to have an impact on stuff? And if it's not, then we shouldn't be doing it. If that new version release isn't actually solving any new problems, then I would argue it's not a full version release. Demote it down to an incremental release, I mean, there's that, at the very least. That's just touching the tip of the iceberg, right? Really, we need to get out of this whole release concept. Everything's turning to software as a service anyway. It's not about release. There's not like a new version 2.0 of this web app or whatever. It's just the next thing, the new feature, new functionality. And hopefully that actually helps make my job easier. I would almost argue we're plowing ahead so far and adding all this stuff, and it's becoming digital cruft, it's digital features, it's overwhelming, that we're not taking enough time to stop, look back at the whole picture and think, maybe let's just start from zero, and what would we build today? And completely clean slate it, right? And then you come up with this blue sky idea. Hopefully you have your engineers involved in that brainstorming process. Another thing that UX designers are horrible about, involving the engineers. Because you can come up with a blue sky idea, but damn it if it doesn't actually work, right? So you have to have engineers involved to make sure it's feasible, right? So when I talk about user experience, one of the other things I kind of talk about is this sort of Venn diagram. Basically, the user experience designer is in charge of the user needs. They're the ones that bring that to the executive boardroom table, right? They represent those users. So that's one circle of the Venn diagram. The business owner has things that are related to the viability of the product. If we do this, will we make some more money? If we do this, will we gain some more customers? That sort of stuff, right? And then there's the technology side and the technology requirements. Because hey, it's going to work this way on this platform if you're designing using these frameworks. So there's those kind of requirements. And really, what we're aiming for is the thing that's in the center of that Venn diagram that addresses all three of those components. And that's what I call sweet spot for UX, right? Or even customer experience if I take it even a broader picture. So I guess, what I can say is, yeah, absolutely. It may seem ludicrous to send a bunch of researchers around, the US to meet all these customers that are in hard to find locations and their time is very limited, but you will gain so much greater insight. I mean, astronomically greater insight by having those users in front of you, having a video camera, watching that experience happen firsthand, seeing 12 users do the same thing incorrectly, or do it a different way that actually works better for them. Now you start completely rethinking that entire task flow for how that functionality is supposed to work, right? Because now you saw somebody completely circumvent it, right? So that's so powerful. I mean, I can't express how important that is. And I think we kind of play it as a second-class citizen. As a lot of UX designers, you know, it's part of our job. If there's not a user researcher on the team, doesn't mean we don't do user research. It means it's now our job, right? We need to learn that, right? We need to learn how to do that. We need to learn how to ask questions, and you know, we need to not stop the user when they're doing something wrong or incorrectly or hacking something. We need to just observe it. And if they run into an error or they did something, you know, where it's causing them to not complete their task, don't interrupt immediately. See if they figure it out. See how long it takes them to figure it out. Then measure the redesign of that and see how more efficiently they're able to get out of that problem, right? And then hopefully, eventually, you're going to have another redesign that's going to have that problem not even exist, right? So you kind of have to take baby steps at it, but there's ways to do that, right? I think we're just not paying enough attention to observing the user firsthand and to thinking essentially different. Thinking outside of, you know, like just, why do we do product releases? Why? Does it help anybody? I don't really think so. It's just, it is marketing. It is kind of put a new brand, a new shiny number on something. And I think ultimately it's really doing a disservice. I'd rather spend several hours messing with what is already released and making it better than launching a new feature, especially one that's not useful. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's definitely a paradigm shift, a cultural change even.
All right, I see that Chris had a question.
Nick, I want to change the world, but I don't know how. You see,
it starts with you.
I work for people who give me a paycheck, and what they tell me is, don't worry about changing the world, Chris. What we need to do is get this new feature out the door. So when they come to you and they say that, what do you say that? I mean, I thought you're like, I love the let's change the world, and I thought this is why designers are so cranky all the time, right? You're a good designer because you want to change the world, because you know what's wrong. You're not satisfied. You can see the nuances. You can see what's wrong. But how do you, how do you change somebody's mind and get them off of that feature release?
Yeah, yeah. So how do you change the concept of feature releases in general, right? And it's tough because sometimes it's a sacred cow, right? It's don't mess with this thing. It's working fine. It's making us a lot of money. If you mess with it, we think you're going to break it, and if it breaks, we're going to lose a lot of money, and we'll all be laid off here. So yeah, you got to avoid making mistakes that are going to get you laid off. But honestly speaking, in my professional career, like the times that I made the most significant impact were the moments where I felt like they're going to fire me for this. They're totally going to fire me for this, and did it maybe anyway, maybe a little bit stubbornly, my own fault maybe, but made something happen. And then it was kind of like, there's that scary moment where you're like in that room with that executive or whoever, realizing that you did something that you weren't supposed to without maybe the right permissions or talking to the right folks, and you just did it anyway because you knew it was the right thing. And there's that pause, and you're just like sweating it. You're just like, oh my God, he's totally gonna tell me I'm fired. And then he's like, that's kind of an interesting concept. And maybe they don't release it the way you thought, or the way you designed it, or the way you did it, but they're now paying attention. Just the fact that they're even thinking about that they're even thinking like, what if we completely did this differently? That's a very phenomenal thing. I used to work at a company called Project 202, and they have a big client called Expedia in Seattle. And I didn't work on the Expedia team, so this is secondhand. I'll just put that caveat after. But they used to be a top-down, relatively speaking, a top-down driven company, meaning a product owner had an idea or thinks they understand the customer, and they probably do more than a lot of folks. And they're like, I want you to release this, here's a feature, that kind of top-down that you talked about, right? And it's not necessarily like the CEO is like saying, do this, and everybody just kind of moves, right? Good CEOs kind of work with their team, and they hear that stuff, and they kind of figure out vision and direction. And they went from a completely different perspective, and now that it's actually the customers that are informing the next release. So it's not the business anymore. It's like the UX designer going to the product manager going, and I'm probably over-exaggerating here, but basically going to the product manager and going, okay, here's what your app is going to be in the next release. And this is a UX designer with the customers that they talk to and all that evidence, all that data and observational learning, driving that into the product, and that becomes essentially how that product moves forward. It's not an easy thing. That's a complete dynamic change. That's an entire cultural change. Cultural change in most organizations, especially the larger ones, takes a lot of time, right? I mean, you know about this probably more than I do. You probably need to give this talk. but yeah, it's a huge paradigm shift, and you kind of have to look at what you have to pick it out. You have to figure out what actually is going to be effective, because you might not be able to completely change the way the automotive industry works overnight, but you might be able to change this one little thing, and that is the gateway, sort of baby step into that process of reanalyzing this stuff and rethinking, kind of going back to the drawing board a little bit. I don't know if that really answered your question, but that's the best answer I can give you for that.
And if I do get fired, you're hiring, right?
We are hiring like crazy. I'm not joking. Come and see me.
All right, thank you, Nick. We have time for one last question.
Hey, Nick, can you describe how you start your multi-screen process? And if so, describe how it would work with a contextual-based thing like target or the path change into black mode.
Yeah, I can't talk about Target in the process for designing that out because it's a different company. And I can't talk about my process as it is today, but I can talk about my process as it was at Blue Flavor. And that was kind of at the bleeding edge of mobile before apps were really a big thing. But essentially, like the best process going forward would be starting with mobile first. It's a big pill to swallow. A lot of companies say, hey, let's do mobile first, but they already have an app. So they're not really doing mobile first, they're really taking what they have and kind of transitioning to mobile. That's the most common case. I love the concept of mobile first, and I think that if you have the option, that's how you should start. When you think about multi-screen environments and stuff, you really have to kind of figure out the calls, like where are the battles to be fought, what is the technology, that Venn diagram again, right? What is the viable product, what is the technology requirements, and what are the user needs? What I've found is a lot of times businesses gravitate towards whatever they read the latest article on instead of whatever makes the most sense. In a lot of cases, a lot of people are advocating for the responsive design, and I think that's a good approach for content-driven sites. When you get into really complicated, gnarly applications that have high transactions, it doesn't work so well. It can work. I think it will get there. It just is not there right now. So in that case, I would actually look at a native experience. And you don't design an experience on iOS and just port it over to Android. You have to actually think about these as completely separate experiences. They may have the same overall task and goals of those tasks, but the functionality to get there may be a bit different. The worst thing you can do is design an iPhone app and then sort of tweak it a little bit for Android and then just launch it in the Android marketplace, because you're going to get 1 star for everything. You're like, I wish I could give this 0 stars. It looks like an iOS app. And you get nobody downloading, a horrible experience. You have to really consider those environments. So that's for complicated systems, not just simply content-driven sites. Content-driven sites, content-driven experiences can be done pretty effectively in the web with responsive that would support all those solutions. But I'm a big advocate of native as well for very complex solutions. I don't know, did that kind of answer your question?
Well, I think it's like when you brought up the simplicity of design for mobile first actually really helps with that, because you have such a limited screen landscape that you have to really drill down on what really you can have to use with that mobile. So you really call it the flow. But I guess going back into wanting out to the tablet and then to the web, what's the process of where do you start to add data in the responsive way of going into something fluid and kind of keep it go? It's like getting the process going through those screen sizes.
Yeah, and you could go through this massive prioritized list of features, because everything's currently in a feature, right? That's pretty much how the existing software probably is. And you could prioritize that and say, okay, well, these are the top priority items that we need to release for this particular release of, iOS. But I think a lot of companies, I think the mistake a lot of companies get into in mobile is that they're like, oh, we're going to hire that agency, we're going to build our mobile app, and then we'll never have to touch it again. Like, no, the next version of iOS is going to come out. The next version of Android, we're going to have Google Glass. We're going to have, the Metro experience on Windows, on Surface. I mean, like, it's constantly moving target. You have to have a dedicated team, or you have to have an agency that you're partnering with. You can't just throw it over the fence and expect that to solve all your problems. So that's one of the big hangups I've seen for a lot of companies. As far as like how to figure out what releases, I mean, this goes back to like observing the user, right? Like, it's really easy to say, like, in our web experience, we have these 75 features or 75 systems. We're going to launch it into a mobile experience. We're just going to start releasing one, each system like every couple of releases. We'll do like 5 systems in this particular release and 5 in that. And you just get caught into that whole feature release and product version number and all that sort of stuff. You're just like, the new version now supports this. Instead of, do people actually use it this way? Are they going to do this in the field? And sometimes you might even run into, some advice as far as like, well, we talk to our users and they actually would never do this in the field, or they would never do this in mobile. Guess what? That doesn't need to be mobile then. I think we tend to like rush in, like, oh, we got to have a mobile app, and we don't even really need one. And in other cases, it's like, oh, we don't need a mobile app, we got it responsive, and it solves all our problems, and it actually ends up being a disaster. So we really have to look and evaluate those technology solutions before we jump in full bore. I think a lot of companies are like, they don't respond until there's a fire, and it usually means the competitors already came out with something, right? And so they're like trying to rush ahead, kind of keep up and get ahead of the competition, and it just doesn't work that way. You have to be planning now. You have to be planning for what could be, And we talk about the technology tsunami. That's essentially what we're dealing with. Is big tsunami of technology. No company when the iPhone 1 released ever thought I would have to have a whole dedicated mobile team for both iOS and for Android. Nobody ever thought that. Nobody ever thought they, would need to build those books up and release multiple times throughout a series of years. They just thought it would just sort of ship if anything. And if you look back to the agency world, I come mostly from the agency background. A lot of agencies were focused on these kind of releases. So when the web first came around, like when these companies didn't have web teams, so they're like, well, hire an agency, they know how to do it. And then like now they're like, okay, well this is pretty important, and we seem to be selling a lot of stuff through e-commerce. Now we need a web team, and so they build a web team. Then mobile came along. They're like, oh, we'll send it to an agency because we don't know how to do mobile. And an agency does it, and then they're like, oh man, this is actually a huge. Now that we have a mobile app out there, we see a large amount of traffic and a lot of upset customers about that experience. So just pull it in-house and build an internal team to do this, And then you constantly see that. You could go talk about CMSs, e-commerce, the endless list of technology as it came along to the timeline, like it was outsourced and then insourced. We're shipped in-house basically. So I see a lot of that too. Is not really fully understanding the complex nature of the technology and not really preparing for what's to come. And instead, like the 11th hour mad rush to get something out the door in time for the holiday season because it's better just to do something. So, we can talk later.
All right. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, real quick. These are the books that I would recommend, by the way. This is the book that Mike actually talked about in his presentation that I quoted a lot. And then this is Mike's book himself. I would highly, if you don't own this book, you should. It should be in everybody's tool chest. And then this is kind of an exploration into more architecture. So, thanks everybody.
Thank you so much. And for anybody who wants Nick's slides, he's going to post them on SlideShare. As I said, he's very good.
You'll be on Speaker Deck.
Okay, Speaker Deck, sorry. But they're going to be posted. We're going to distribute the link, so if you're interested, you can go back and refer to them. Now it's time for our UX Kit giveaway.
Thank you, Alberta. And actually, I'm going to let Mike